Imagine growing up your entire childhood with an undiagnosed learning deficiency. Imagine struggling every waking minute to remember what question you asked, just to realize you never even asked a question. Imagine listening to a 30-minute lecture to not hear a single word your teacher just said. Imagine working to pass a test for 5 hours that your best friend studied for 15 minutes before it began, just to once again be slapped across the face with failure. Imagine what it's like to know there's a problem, but everybody ignores you. I grew up as a smart, quiet girl in elementary school. I was never rude, I never asked questions, and I always did my work. I would often sit in the back of the classroom and just stare off at the whiteboard. My teachers applauded me for being so well behaved. They often marked me as mature for my age. All of my teachers ignored that maybe it wasn't maturity, but confusion glossed over by the social construct that girls need to be polite, respectful, and all-knowing, while boys are allowed to get away with being rowdy. Because, from a young age, girls are told to be obedient, ADHD and ADD often fly under the radar, as opposed to boys who are allowed to behave as they want, which leads for an easier time spotting disabilities. Since no teacher ever noticed anything off about my learning habits, I had to teach myself how to process the information given to me. I subconsciously began to learn new study skills and I adapted them to my own needs. I became a flashcard queen. That was the only way I could remember anything. Even though I learned a few tricks and tips to help me along the way, it wasn't enough. I never understood why I spent hours after school on my homework when all of my friends had finished it in class. How did they have time for that? I worked and studied harder than most people I knew, but my grades were still suffering. By the time 8th grade hit, I dreaded class. I was so scared I was going to get in trouble for not knowing the answer to a question. The problems grew bigger and bigger, and school became the main source of my anxiety. 9th grade was the first time a teacher noticed anything abnormal about my learning habits. He asked me to stay after class and talk to him about why I was struggling so much. Together, we came up with a plan to help me succeed in his class, and that was the final catalyst for my family and me deciding that I needed to get tested for ADHD, ADD, and other learning disabilities. That summer, I spent over 72 hours with a neuropsychologist doing tests and activities that would help her figure out what problems I was facing. When the diagnosis came back as the inattentive type of ADHD, along with a few other processing issues, a huge weight was lifted off of my shoulders. I was going to be able to work proactively to solve the problems I was facing. The next year, I went to the administration at my school to request a 504. What a 504 is a legal document that provides accommodations for students with different types of disabilities. My educational therapist and the neuropsychologist that did my testing both advocated for me to get one. I needed help in school, and this was the only way I was going to get that. In the first meeting I went to, my family and I brought the report and diagnosis for the administration to read through, along with my grades to show how I was struggling with testing. The fact that I was failing all of my tests, had a written report on my specific ADHD, was suffering severe anxiety due to school, and spent over triple the time on my work than an average student was not enough for them to give me the very few accommodations I was asking for. Instead, I was told that I was too smart to need a 504, and in order to acquire one, I would need to start failing all of my classes. I was absolutely shocked and taken aback by that. How could I be penalized for something that I worked hard for? My family and I pushed tirelessly for the team of administrators just to hear me out. Meeting after meeting, no one would listen. By the time of my last meeting, my grades were severely suffering. The added stress of trying to achieve basic educational rights was taking a huge toll on me mentally. Finally, my educational therapist came to our last meeting, and with her, my parents, a few teachers, and a counselor all standing behind me, the administration decided that I was deserving of a 504 after all. After 16 years, I was finally given the help that I needed. I've been working at an educational disadvantage for most of my life. If my teachers had just taken the time to truly watch me and remove those preconceived notions that young girls are impervious to any type of non-visible learning disability, I would have had a much smoother time in the school system. Learning to work with what I was given has helped shape me into the hardworking person I am now. I'm grateful I learned a work ethic from a young age, but I'm also extremely resentful that the schools were so unmotivated to help me and other students like me succeed. It is absolutely critical that parents and teachers are hyper-aware of any challenges or unusual behaviors students are facing. No child should go the majority of their school career without knowing what's wrong. It's an alienating feeling, and it can be easily avoided. It's most important that students listen to themselves. Do not let anyone tell you what you feel. You know yourself better than anyone else. Understand that no matter how hard school, making friends, or even sitting still is, you'll eventually overcome those barriers and become the happiest version of yourself. Take your struggles and turn them into something positive. Thank you.